Welcome back to the Professional Lovers Channel. I'm still Al.
And I'm still Patty, and we're still the Professional Lovers.
Yes.
And we're probably saying welcome back to us.
True.
Since we're the ones that have been absent for the past 2 weeks. And real briefly, before we get started, let's tell you what's been going on.
Mm-hmm.
So Easter weekend is a major weekend for our area. The school that we're both affiliated with has homecoming on that weekend. So we had company. So our house, the office that we usually tape in was occupied. We couldn't even watch the show because, our company came in that Wednesday. So it was just hectic.
Yes.
And so that's why we didn't get a chance to do the recap 2 weeks ago.
Then it went from hectic to
hellish.
Yeah.
So this past week, unfortunately, we were victims of an electrical fire in our house.
Yes.
And so that happened on Tuesday. And so, as you can imagine, we are not in our house anymore because the fire, which was really contained in the kitchen, but the water damage used to put out the fire and ensure that there was no other places where it could ignite. And then the smoke damage and soot damage has pretty much trashed our entire house. So our new background is courtesy of my mother, in whose house we are now living until our house is restored.
And just to let you know, we are safe. Everything
Nobody was hurt.
Fine.
We're good.
Just materials.
And, and we consider that a blessing.
Yes.
So we're still doing this. Thank you to our sister Pearl,
yes,
who has given us what we need to allow us to watch Married at First Sight now, since we're in a different location where our streaming service is not available. So that we can still, talk with you, give you our thoughts about what's going on with the couples. And it helps to give us some sense of normalcy.
Yes, it distracts us from all of what we have to do.
Exactly, because it's going to be a long process.
Yes, it is.
But anyway, like I said, we're focusing on the blessings and all the positives. And the end result.
There have been truly many
absolutely.
Blessings.
And the end result, which is a brand new house. So with that, let's go ahead and get started.
Let's do that.
All right. So we're recapping 2 weeks together. So we'll start with Nicole and Chris. Who talked to, let's see, in the first episode, 2 weeks ago, the episode was Dr. Pia was making a visit to everybody. Mm-hmm. And then last week's episode, the experts were making a visit to everybody because they're about 12 days away from decision day. And they wanted to know what are some issues that you may need to work through as you begin to approach decision day, right? So with Nicole and Chris, Dr. Pia kind of helped Nicole uncover some personal issues.
Yeah, some internal issues that she needs to deal with and continually need to deal with because they're deep-rooted.
Right, stemming from her past relationships. And both she and Chris expressed how in past relationships, sex sometimes was, that's all that the relationship was built on, was sex. And they did not want their relationship to be the same way.
Exactly. At
the same time, Nicole realized that she was having issues really being vulnerable with Chris, even though their sex life is good, according to them. But she engages in a lot of self-deprecating talk where she talks about her body or she talks about herself in negative ways. And Dr. Pia was encouraging her
she
to
kind of
stop
put an
it.
Immediate stop to it. No, we're not doing that.
So, and they said that they were open to trying, new sex scenarios, enhancements, whatever, but they didn't really think that they needed that. because they're kind of satisfied with where they are.
But they were willing.
Even though I think Pia, was encouraging them to do that. One thing they tried was the bidet. Now, us women know what the bidet is and, what it's totally been used for, but I don't think a whole lot of men really...
No, a whole lot of men don't know what a bidet is all about. I mean, even if they do know it, they haven't been properly introduced to one.
So Chris was introduced to one, and...
you could hear him through the walls. Woo!
And, yeah, I'm not sure that he liked it very much or thought that it would become part of his regular routine.
Yeah. And I don't think any guy makes that a routine. It's just a little different.
So, now when they talk to, I think it's Pastor Cal as the expert, Nicole's concern, and she's expressed this several times before, is as she's working through her issues, will Chris want to stick around? Will her issues be so bad or so complicated that he's not willing to, to stay in it with her?
Yeah.
And she basically said, and if not, then you can. There's a door. And that hard shell, that hard New Yorker Italian shell, was evident when she was like, if you can't handle it, there's the door. And he was like, the door is not even
That's
in
not
my...
an option. It's not an option.
And,
He's there.
And again, we bring out our book, and oh good, you can't tell that it's soot stained in this. in the camera. But we've talked before about divorce, never making divorce an option.
An option, right? Yeah.
And that's essentially what Chris said when he's like, the door is not even in my view, so let's not even go there. I'm here for the long haul, and I'm here to support you just like I feel you've supported me. And he doesn't feel like the help has been one-sided, and that's something that she asked him. In my need right now, is it too much? Am I asking for too much? And she was really trying to work through that, as in, at one point she was like, if I say I need time, then don't give me time. And he was like, okay, so when you ask me to give you space, you don't want me to give you space. I'm confused. And that is confusing.
It is, but he's got to really learn, and that's where that time factor comes in, where you learn your spouse and you understand their needs. And just because they say something, it may be what they feel they want to do because it's a safe space to them, because it's what they're accustomed to doing. But the safer space is to become vulnerable and know that you can address that space with someone who's not going to take advantage of you.
Right.
And it makes you stronger in doing so.
Now, one thing she said that I have said to you before is, if you're in that space with me, sometimes I'm just talking stuff out loud because sometimes we need to hear it to process it. And I'm not really asking you to solve my issue. Yeah. I just need you to listen to me.
And men have a habit of doing that. And I mean, that's what we do. We solve a problem. That's what we're accustomed to do. That's how we're wired, as opposed to going through the process. Because sometimes just by finding a solution doesn't necessarily fix the problem. That's like a dam. You stop the water, but did you fix the hole? Right. So.
Right. And so that's important. And I think it's important for the female to say, I just need you to listen. I don't want a solution right now. Yeah. We'll get to that. Right now, I just want you to listen.
Yeah. Don't hear me. Listen to me.
Because you don't want to make an assumption that they know you're not asking for a solution at the moment.
Right. True.
Yeah.
Because we'll jump to, let's get to the end of this. It's uncomfortable.
Right.
So because it's uncomfortable, we're trying to get to the point where we're comfortable again as quickly as possible. And that's just our thinking. That's the man's wiring.
Right. Okay, Gina and Clint. Well, their visit with Dr. Pia was interesting because they
nothing to talk about.
They're friends with each other.
Yeah.
There's no sexual intimacy, attraction, no physical intimacy, no sexual attraction as far as they
say.
Yes, as far as they say on camera. So there's no
effort.
Well, since there's no attraction, there's no effort.
Right.
And Dr. Pia was saying, so you're not even attempting to create
moods or
in order to
scenarios, surroundings, to manifest a possible scenario where some type of attraction can be built upon.
Or ignited and then built. And so she, began asking them, well, what turns you on? And they talked about scents, music and that kind of thing. And then when she said, okay, so how about you do something to create a mood, to create a vibe without sex
the expectation
being right. And Clint was like, well, how?
What is that? What's that?
It's almost like, what's the point?
Really? And again, we're about solutions. We're trying to get to the point.
Yeah. And, and she said just to take the pressure off, because if you don't feel attracted, then it does feel like a lot of pressure to try to force
the situation.
Issue. And she does not want it to be forced, but you don't know if creating a vibe from friendship can eventually lead to, physical and sexual intimacy being ignited.
Yeah.
So that's kind of, what they were given the assignment to do. And so they used some physical items to see how that felt, the feather and the massager and the hairbrush. Hadn't heard of that one.
It's interesting.
Okay.
I mean, if you have tough skin, just a prickly thing, it kind of makes you tingle.
Oh, that's what you have fingernails for.
Sometimes.
Just saying. Anyway. And so they tried that on each other to see what they liked the best, and then kind of talked about, answering questions, and so they were trying to create a vibe, a mood with discussion.
They're logical in the process.
Right. And then when they had their visit, I think they visited with Dr. Pepper, with the expert. She was saying they really needed to up their game.
Yeah.
Because, still being in a friend zone at this point.
At 6 weeks plus.
Yeah.
I mean, even though they had a rocky start, and kind of put each other, in the outhouse, not in the doghouse, in the outhouse, and came back, and they've seen the growth. They've seen by maintaining interaction that there is definitely a reason and the purpose of them being paired together, that they see that value. But now it's, gone past the value and, trying to get into the emotional side of things and enjoying the growth of getting to know one another and, having that intimacy.
And so, Pepper asked them, what is it about the other one? Can you tell the other person what it is you like about them where you are now? And, Gina talked about the fact that he's that she likes how he has integrated himself into her life. Being supportive, and that she feels like he's proud of her. And, so that has really stood out to her. And he, on the other hand, complimented her character and her spirit.
And he was proud of what she has achieved.
And said that, for him, if she were to do something unexpected that showed that she put time and effort into whatever that is, that would be appealing to him.
Personally, I think if he was willing, he would go into her salon, allow himself to be blindfolded, and she give him a haircut that she would like to see on him. And he would have to, well, just for a change of pace. I mean, I think that's part of a certain appeal that she would find attractive toward him.
Especially since she told Dr. Pia that he had no swag. And he was very like, what?
I am Senor Swag.
And she was like, no, like that hair, you need to cut it.
Yeah.
Okay. And he probably needs to trim some of that beard too.
Yeah, definitely.
And you know, and he was like, well, what about when I dressed up and had my French? She was like, yeah, but we need to do something about that hair. So yeah, that would, I bet, would ignite her if she cleaned him up the way he could be cleaned up.
It worked for me.
It sure did, because when I met him, it was on a basketball court. He had just finished the game, and even though he's cute,
it was at the end of the hair growth. It was a little thick.
He was looking a little scruffy.
Beard. I mean, it was before the gray, but you know,
He was looking a little scruffy.
She called me a woolly monster man.
And not to his face though, but he was still cute. You know, through that I could see his attractiveness.
Potential.
And then when I picked him up on a weekend afternoon, and he had just had a haircut and a goatee trim and shaved and oiled and glistening, I was like, ooh.
She saw me through the windshield of the car, so I couldn't see the goosebumps, but she had goosebumps.
Okay.
Close enough. That's my story. I'm sticking to it.
Yes, it was a marked difference. So, you know, when you clean up, it
makes a difference.
It can spark something.
True.
So who knows? Maybe Clint will let Gina do that.
And I hope he heard that. I really hope he heard that, because I think that can make a huge difference, because I think he's just looking for an opening with Gina, because he's always said that he was a sexual being, you know, and that's the man thing, but you know, for men more so than others. But I think if he gave her a reason to just open up her eyes, that he could see an opening.
It could happen.
It could.
If they let it.
Yeah.
Jasmine and Eris. Well, Jasmine has reached the end of her rope.
Yeah, she kind of broke twice.
Yeah. She doesn't feel like, of course, her needs are being met. She feels like they're just friends, and that's not what she signed up for.
Yeah.
She doesn't feel like she's holding back. And, you know, he's become much more vulnerable and sharing deep things with her. He feels like she doesn't do the same with him. And even though she feels like she doesn't hold back, she really is.
Well, she is now.
She is, because she doesn't feel... She hasn't felt that his questions were genuine. She's felt that his questions were just kind of, you know, taking up time and space. So it's not being asked. They're not being asked because he's interested.
Yeah.
Because otherwise he shows no interest. As in, there's no physical touch. There's no hugging. There's no kissing.
And see, from his perspective, the longer he delays or questions whether or not he should, the more insecure he will feel in attempting to do it, such as a peck on the cheek or reaching out to hold her hand or giving her a hug. You know, the more unfamiliar you become with the situation, the more resistance you'll even have to putting yourself in that situation to,
And he did say that the longer that they have no physical intimacy, the more awkward it becomes.
Right.
Yeah. So, so she ended up, you know, saying that she feels like Eris kind of has one big toe in.
Yeah, and the rest of
him is out. And so she's not feeling secure.
Right.
in engaging the way he says he wants her to, because he's not giving her that security. She is a person who needs to see behavior rather than just hearing the words. So just disregard all background noises you might hear. Again,
welcome to our world.
We're in a different place. So anyway, our son just walked in. Hey, son.
Hey, son.
Oh, he's gonna come show you his face.
He likes
to
say,
hey. So anyway, so that's kind of where they left it with Dr. Pia. Now, they had a visit from Devon Franklin as their expert, who visited them separately.
Yeah.
So that they would feel comfortable talking about their issues to him by themselves. So, while Jasmine, it was saying, when we've been talking or whatever, he has a lot of stuff to talk about. He can talk an hour about, he's talked about the suicide of his friend or the murder of his dad and all that. And she's like, and I haven't had anything really to talk about.
I haven't had experiences like that in my life.
Right.
So she thinks.
Well, and that was the thing. She said, he can ask me a question. I'm just like, it's not a lot to it. But as Devon probed further and asked her about the time in her life where she was bullied, and she began to talk about even then how she was, described as perfect and too proper and too put together and too calm and
She's had to deal with a lot of Aris's cousins.
Perceptions.
Back in her younger days.
Exactly. And what that did to her from a self-esteem standpoint, and then how she had to.
And it's traumatic.
It is very traumatic. And Devon was like, so there are things that you've experienced that you could talk about.
Yeah.
But she said that she would be afraid of his response.
Right, but what
if she were to share with him,
right, what she's accustomed to doing is pushing things under the rug, and Devon indicated that eventually there's only so much that can be under the rug that it will eventually get exposed.
Right.
So, she needs to make an adjustment.
And that was her aha moment. That she sweeps things under the rug because she doesn't like confrontation, because she never saw her parents, and we talked about this before, deal with conflict.
Right. So she hasn't had the experience of knowing how or what levels of, resistance or push to deal with an issue that is uncomfortable. Conflict resolution. Right.
So, when they met with Dr. Pepper, well, first, when Devon talked to Aris, of course, kept talking about how he wasn't attracted to her. And he was like, do you want to be more attracted to her? What is it that you want out of life, out of a marriage, out of this and that? And everything that he described, he was like, you have the potential for that with her.
With her. Everything that he said he wanted is already packaged and in front of him.
And Devon got him to admit that he has not put in
the work,
the same amount of work and effort into her and their marriage as he has put into his job.
Yeah. Or anything else that he's done in the past.
Right. And so, I think that was kind of, I can't say that that's really an aha moment for him, because he knows that he
knew he wasn't. But I think
much time and
I think
effort.
that was a peeling of the onion and him getting exposed.
Right.
Okay, now that you haven't put in the effort, everybody else knows you haven't put in the effort now too. So, what are you going to do?
Right. And so, I think they talked to Dr. Pepper as well, after Devon Franklin. And because they were asked a question, do you see a possibility for this marriage? And while I internally was hoping somebody would say no, because it doesn't appear that they're going to be able to get beyond their
in the short period of time that they have.
Yeah, left. Their issues. They both said yes.
Yeah, reluctantly.
You know, and so we'll see what happens in the next 12 days, because at the end of the episode, when they were line dancing and stuff, and she walked off, and Dr. Pepper had encouraged her to start speaking her mind about what he does.
Don't absorb what goes on. If you don't
brush
like
it under the rug.
Deal with it.
Don't worry about what his response will be. You go ahead and you say what you need to say. And she walked off and basically said, you're more interested in dancing with the instructor than dancing with your wife. And I'm not going to take that anymore. And he went on to try to explain why that was, but he apologized to her. And so, I don't see them being able to get over their obstacles. Well, she doesn't trust him anymore.
Yeah.
And because of what he's displayed. And, if he doesn't want to change, then he won't change.
Yeah. So. And I think it might be a little too little, too late. Not to say that it couldn't happen, but he'd have to do something really phenomenal to get her to accept him once again. Because she was accepting him just because he was in the process. Because she was all in to the process, and she was committed to the process, and she found initially, and understand what I'm saying, she found that she did not have someone in the process with her. So she gave up on the process.
Yeah. So our last couple, Kirsten and Shaq, who also have communication issues. But in talking with the experts, Kirsten. I keep calling her Kristen.
Because she ain't acting right yet.
Kirsten made a lot of comments that made it appear that she's still comparing Shaq to her dad. Yeah. The positive image of her dad. Now, she had this whole discussion about masculinity and what that looks like to her, whether or not she sees Shaq as masculine. And that was interesting.
Yeah.
Because, she felt like, being a man or being masculine means that you're making things happen.
Yeah.
And you're making, you're taking care of things in a way, in you're hands-on and you're assertive.
And it's a way of the visual aspect of security is addressed.
So while she feels comfortable that he could take care of her, she doesn't necessarily feel secure.
Yeah.
Yes, and safe. And he's like, well, what does that mean? Do we have to get robbed and I beat off the man in order for you to feel like I can keep you safe? Or, do we have to go through some kind of
trauma?
Yeah, trauma in order for me to prove? And that was his point. I'm always proving.
Yeah.
There's never a time that I'm not having to prove to her how I feel about her or what I can do for her or what, and for him that's getting tiring.
Right. And I really believe that her visualization of his sensitivity skews her thoughts of him, because her father was not a expressively sensitive man, just like when it came down to confrontations, or things within the home, things didn't have to be dealt with, or she didn't have to see that or express it. Things were just taken care of,
And so he felt like, in his mind, he sees himself as tough or masculine, but he feels like she just wants him to mimic her father.
Yeah, that's his perception of it, because it's come up.
Because that's what her perception of masculinity
is.
That's
what she's expressed.
Right. So, I was interested when they were talking on the phone when he was out of town.
Mm-hmm.
Why his attitude seemed to be so blah.
Yeah.
He was just, he was just blah.
But come to find out, there was a combination of things that, he wanted her to be there.
Well, she had promised to go with him.
Right. She had promised to go with him.
Then she backed out.
Then she had something that happened. She backed out of it. But
then it was going to be the weekend.
Right.
She was going to join him for the weekend. And then she backed out.
But the thing about it with her is that he didn't indicate how earnestly he wanted her to be there with him as support. Because everything that anyone has said, even he has said, I just need your support.
Well, that's a big thing for him.
It is.
Especially when he found out he wasn't graduating.
Well, that's the whole thing about it.
Right.
His disappointment came when he received negative information and he didn't have his support system with him.
Right.
And that is kind of unfair in him leaning on her by not knowing exactly why he needed her there at that time. I don't know if he knew that he was going to get his decision that weekend, and maybe that might have been the reason why he wanted her to be there, but he didn't express that, if that were the case.
And that's key, because in her mind, the fact that I'm asking you about what's going on, I'm inquiring about how I ask about your work, I ask about your day, I remind you about this that has to be done, or this you have to do, whatever. And he's wanting her to see him in his element.
Right.
He's wanting her to be by his side, but he's not stating it.
Now, this is a very similar situation that's in our book.
Okay.
And it talks about loving someone the way they need to be loved, as opposed to how you are accustomed to your understanding of what love is about.
Before.
Because when he went to see her in her environment, when she was doing real estate, and he went to the house and, seeing how she does what she does, and, her, in her element, he was looking for the same thing from her for his security,
right.
And understanding that he has a partner, but again, if that's not her way of understanding, or if that's not her way of loving, she needs to know how she needs to love you if that's what you need.
And the expert basically said that you can't expect something and then be mad when it doesn't happen if you haven't communicated your expectation.
Exactly.
And that's what she kept saying. Why didn't you say, when I decided I couldn't come, I really want to have you there with me?
Yeah.
And I would have done whatever I needed to do to really be there with you. Yeah. And we've talked about this before, making assumptions that your partner can know,
read your brain,
what you're thinking, or from your behavior, your facial expressions, your attitudes. Yeah, we may be able to pick up that something's not right, but if I don't ask you about it, then don't assume that I'm automatically going to know.
And then hold me accountable for what you think the solution should be that I should provide, because you haven't expressed to me what it is that you need.
And so that seems to be a sticking point for them, because when they were at the dinner and he was sharing that he had been at a point of his life depressed to the point of thinking about it, suicide could have been an end result, even though he didn't take it there, but that's how dark he was. That's the dark place that he was in. And and because she didn't
verbally
pop up and give him verbal support, he got up and walked away.
Yeah.
And she was like, I didn't even have time to respond, because Nicole was facilitating the entire discussion, as she always does when the couples get together. And so Kirsten did get a call from his mother.
Yeah.
Wasn't it?
Or did she call his mother? I mean, they talked.
She got a call from his mother.
Okay.
Saying he needs you to support him.
Yeah.
And wow, that's I mean, you know, mom is taking care of her son, that still needs to come from him. True. Tell me, how do I need to support you?
How?
Because in my mind, I'm supporting you.
Yeah.
But if that's not what you need, that's not the way you need it, tell me how you need it.
Yeah.
So that I can do it that way.
Yeah.
And so he basically said, you know, I need you to be invested in what I do and how I do it. I need you. And this goes back to a tip that's in our book, Becoming a Professional Lover, that says recognize, appreciate, and use each other's skills to help your love grow. We like to see each other in their professional element. You know, I like to see him dealing with, you know, the students he deals with, or how he talks to the parents, or how he conducts meetings, or how he, I mean, you know, no, I don't go to work with him every day. But there's something to seeing your spouse do what they do that increases your level of being proud. That then feeds that connection that you have.
You're right. It enhances, it expands and enhances the value that you see in your respective other. I mean, that it's not just us. It's your world, because there's only a segment of each other's world that overlaps. You know, there's the rest of your life that you have to live that you won't have your spouse next to you. So when they do come into your world and they see you expressing what it is you do, you know, they have a new respect for all of what you do and what you're capable of doing and how you go about doing it.
And that last part of using each other's skill, when you see them in their professional element and you see kind of the breadth of what they do, then you can go, oh man, for him, if I need, you know, some PR advice, or I need some communication created or whatever, he knows that he can come to me to get that, because that's part of my professional wheelhouse. If I need someone who's good at networking and talking and meeting people and putting people together and putting me with other people, even marketing me as, you know, my publicity agent, I can go to him because those skills are in his professional wheelhouse. So, and that leads to the last tip that we're going to bring out to you, which is togetherness in work and play will keep you bonded. When you are working, even in a professional sense, and using each other's skills to advance what you're trying to do, then that offers another point of connection, because you're working together to advance the other person.
You're providing that support that they need, that they otherwise may not get from anywhere else. But and you're as close as you are to that individual. You're the closest thing to that individual, that getting that support makes them feel confident in taking that next step, expanding, improving, building their practices, their profession, whatever the case may be.
Because if you advance him and he advances me, then we're advancing together, and we're advancing the household.
Power couple.
There you go. I think we're too old to be a power couple now. We don't have that much time left. But anyway, you get the idea.
We can.
Oh, well, in our later last years.
Yeah, we can be a twilight power couple.
Oh, there you go. Twilight power couple. Yeah. I kind of like that.
Yeah.
Well, that's it.
Yes.
For the recap.
We've
not
caught
too
up.
Bad. Yeah. And didn't keep you here for an hour trying to catch up for 2 weeks. So hopefully, based on what we're having to deal with in our process, we can get back on track and post up on Fridays like we normally do. But if we don't, now you understand, you know, what we're having to deal with, and you can rest assured that we're not just ignoring what we started. We're just trying to fit it all in.
Yeah, we're dealing with life.
There you go, life. So keep us in your prayers, and until we see you next time, we tell you to love yourself
and each other.
Bye.
Peace.